Welcome to this edition of Inside the Academy Studio.
Today's conversation will be about the best of the rest. Those films that receive some Academy recognition, but not for the top prize. The format will be slightly different. We're going to go into more rapid fire, going through each film that at least one of us has seen and talking about the honorees for that film. So we're going to begin alphabetically with Begin Again. A film that came out in early fall, and it kind of maps out the progression of a record producer who's met the downfall, basically. He's struggling, personally, professionally, Mark Ruffalo, and a singer-songwriter who's gone through a terrible breakup, Keira Knightley, and the two come together to produce a outdoor record that's supposed to kind of reinvigorate both, and they find a lot in each other while they're doing it. Before we talk about Lost Stars, a song sung by Adam Levine and Keira Knightley, your overall impressions of Begin Again?
Begin Again was like, this is like correction, it was a fun summer movie. That was an alternative to all the other louder movies he during summer. Didn't have the strongest script, but the characters were likable and you were cheering for them. So what can you expect for?
How about the song?
And the song was good. I listened to the song a few times, just randomly on the background. So it's definitely successful, and I wouldn't mind that it's nominated, and I totally wouldn't hate it if it wins.
Okay, the next film was a film that I saw, was Beyond the Lights, starring Gugu Mbatha-Raw and Nate Parker. Basically, kind of a story of a singer in the vein of a Rihanna or Beyonce, who is struggling with her fame and basically why she's doing this. Similar to Begin Again, both two musical films, and Nate Parker, a police officer who has aspirations as a politician, who kind of meets her in very unlikely circumstances. This film was a surprise to me. I really liked the trailer, it kind of hooked me. I went to see the film, and it's a solid 2 hours of an emotional relationship being explored, two actors that obviously care, two actors that work well together, and the music is believable. And for any Machine Gun Kelly fans, he's got a memorable role in it too. Okay, next is the next part of the Avengers cog machine Marvel Universe, Captain America the Winter Soldier. You guys kind of know the story here. A lot of Black Widow, I'm pretty sure I'm right there. ScarJo. Nick Fury kind of meets some weird circumstances. And the Winter Soldier is played by an old colleague of Steve Rogers. Sebastian Stan plays him here. Your impressions and obviously the visual effects.
Yeah, first of all, I want to give note. I'm very sad that Redbox Canada is leaving. This is the last movie he took out of Redbox Canada. It was a nice, cheap option to get Blu-rays. But overall, Captain America, just like kind of opposite beginning and a movie that's you kind of like the characters, good action, and the visual effects were good, but like at the same time, it wasn't a typical visual effects heavy piece. There were times they used visual effects, but it wasn't used as the key in the action or the storytelling, except for maybe the last finishing sequences. So I can see why it's nominated, but I don't think it will take the win.
Yeah, it really wasn't a big part until the end. The next film that both of us saw was Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. We joined Caesar and his group, I think 10 years after the rise of the Planet of the Apes. There's no James Franco in this movie, but there is a group of humans who have survived and are trying to rehabitate San Francisco. They make contact with the apes, and there's obviously a big clash, but there's also internal clashes within the apes. Many are not liking the way Caesar is handling it, the main opposition being Koba who tries to take away Caesar's power, and it obviously ends in a big showdown between the two. Once again, great work here, using the actors to simulate the apes and then rendering that on computers. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes does a great job of seamless kind of visual effects. even though we obviously know that those apes are visual effects.
Yeah, but watching this movie, I don't think it crossed your mind that often. I'm seeing apes, and the apes were better characters in the movie than the humans, and then that shows why this movie was so successful than what the story is telling, because you were able to see this war from both sides of the picture, and for a summer blockbuster, it's probably one of the better ones.
Okay, the next movie that we both watched was Foxcatcher, and probably the last movie outside of the Best Picture nominees. It's being recognized for director for Bennett Miller, actor for Steve Carell, supporting actor for Mark Ruffalo, screenplay. It tells the dark story of men's wrestling, the U.S. men's wrestling in the late 80s. Two brothers played by Tatum and Ruffalo, and a multi-millionaire successful person played by Carell, the DuPonts, and just basically the darkness that their stories and their lives take. My first impressions, I thought Mark Ruffalo was exceptional. If I had to vote for Best Supporting Actor, I would vote for Mark Ruffalo. It's something unique that Steve Carell did, obviously known for his comic timing, a dark portrayal. I think Channing Tatum is still a work in progress, but he's getting there, I feel.
Yeah, but Channing Tatum wasn't even a big complaint about this movie I had, because I felt like the other roles were able to build off what Channing Tatum was doing to make up for any deficiency you thought he had emotionally.
Absolutely, and Bennett Miller's direction, solid. Quick fact: he's one of the rare exceptions of being nominated for Best Director and not having Best Picture, especially in the expanded field. The next film was the October mega hit Gone Girl, based on the Gillian Flynn novel, adapted by Gillian Flynn, and obviously Amazing Amy Dunn, played by Rosamund Pike, is being recognized in the leading actress category. Rosamund Pike, not familiar to many people. If you saw An Education, you knew how good she could be. A lot of the roles she's done in Britain. She was tremendous in this film, showing, I think the best and the hardest part of this is showing a pretty person play ugly, and she felt very ugly when she's Amy trying to escape, and then she was convincing enough being that ice-cold, calculating Amy Dunn.
Yeah, absolutely. This is definitely a career revival for Rosamund Pike. She's been in a lot of movies. Like, I bet you've seen Rosamund Pike, but you haven't even known that she was in these movies, because she's typically always been the supporting actress. And so to finally have her in a role where she's gone to that next level and getting a lot of publicity for this role is really nice to see. I think the only thing I probably would have liked to see is, if possible, to see this movie get nominated for screenplay, just because for that entire month of October, this the book and the adaptation of that book provided created so much cultural discussion, and whether or not this movie was justified for the amount of violence, for any implications it makes about relationships. And I thought it was definitely a good movie to watch, and just like any other summer movie that comes out, it created a good discussion.
Tons of buzz. And another film that had a lot of buzz, and probably the most successful film by most metrics, is Guardians of the Galaxy. Another Marvel's fare, but based on lesser-known characters. You have Chris Pratt, who's basically become an A-list star in front of our eyes, playing the Star-Lord. You have memorable voice performances by Bradley Cooper and Vin Diesel. It's being recognized for makeup and visual effects. Your overall thoughts of Guardians of the Galaxy?
Yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy is the biggest risk Marvel's probably taken to date, and it does pay off well, because it kind of creates not just a superhero movie in a lot of people's eyes, it creates another Star Wars movie. They like these characters together, this misfit band, and the adventures that they go on. Because at the end of the day, some movies are just meant to be watched as a visual experience, and Guardians of the Galaxy does deliver that.
Yeah, it's going to be weird. We have Star Wars coming back, and Guardians is the new Star Wars. There's going to be a lot of Star Wars over the next couple of years. The next film is the ambitious Christopher Nolan film, Interstellar, recognized 5 times for score, for visual effects, for the sound categories. Starring Matthew McConaughey, Jessica Chastain, Anne Hathaway. It's kind of the end result, if you've watched Theory of Everything, of a lot of the theories of black holes. You have McConaughey traveling through a wormhole to save planet Earth, which is becoming extinct, uninhabitable for food, for life, and basically the harrowing story that he goes through. Zimmer, once again, very solid. He's kind of made his bread and butter recently in Christopher Nolan films, using those loud chords. Visual effects, capturing 3 or 4 distinct planets and capturing space is very solid. And sound, you don't expect any different from Christopher Nolan, especially if you watch this in IMAX. Quality sound all throughout.
Yeah, I'll admit, I watched this at IMAX twice, so as you can tell, I'm definitely a big fan, so I'm definitely going to be a bit biased when talking about this movie, but absolutely, it deserves the nomination that it received, and it will probably win a few of them, to be for sure. It's a movie that will, even though it's not being recognized as Best Picture, I think it will still be remembered that just because of all the influence it's had over a lot of this movie-going audience, and whether it be interested in science or space as a result of watching a movie like Interstellar.
Recognized for Meryl Streep's performance, Best Supporting Actress, Costume, and Production. I wasn't very familiar with this musical, but I expected it to resonate more emotionally, and I felt it didn't. Possibly does more as a musical. There's a significant, depth in the film that, honestly, watching it didn't even register to me. And that happened, I kind of had to rewind and kind of catch up. Streep is solid. I always, when she plays something like this, I always think of her in Death Becomes Her, the 1992 film. She always kind of goes back to that in my mind. And it does a fair job in creating a solid costume and production design. The next movie that we watched was the Lego Movie, which is nominated for Best Original Song. And what's that song called?
Everything is awesome!
Yeah, performed by Tegan and Sarah and Lonely Island. It's kind of the first look into the world is through that song, for the character voiced by Chris Pratt again. Before we're taken to weird places, Everything Awesome is resonating. And many people, I didn't see many animated films, but I think Lego Movie had to be one of the top 5. Any other opinions?
Yeah, Lego Movie, definitely a very entertaining movie, and the only thing is, sometimes kids can get loud in a theater, as I remember watching this movie. It's been a while since I watched any movie in theaters, so I'm going to make sure to be a little more selective in the timing I see another one.
Not on a long weekend, I would assume, right? The next movie is Nightcrawler, which stars Jake Gyllenhaal and takes a very intense and spooky look into someone who is changing careers, but is really invested in their new career. Also starring Rene Russo. It's being recognized as an original screenplay by Dan Gilroy. Jake Gyllenhaal is probably one of the 6 or 7 best performances of the year, and he plays a very creepy, but very sincere video production chaser of brutal stories throughout LA.
Yeah, I think that's what's so interesting about his performance, that he's not just a psychopath. He's very pragmatic and adaptable at the same time. So that's why I think it's a little unfortunate that while the screenplay is good and it's very unique and it was one of the big surprises of the year, Gyllenhaal's performance has a symbiotic relationship with the screenplay to bring the most out of this movie. So it is a bit of a shame that you didn't get to see him being nominated for a deserving role.
Yeah, it was a very enjoyable 2 hours. The next film that was recognized that I got to see was Wild, which is being recognized for Reese Witherspoon's leading performance and Laura Dern's supporting performance. Laura Dern, it's a return after many years to the Oscars. She has a very minor role, but memorable. She influences Reese Witherspoon's Cheryl Strayed in many ways. And for Reese, it's probably her most immersive performance. She's on screen for basically 95% of the performance, often by herself. She's playing someone who's had a very trying life, and does things that many people don't associate with the American all American Reese Witherspoon. So it's a very interesting look, comparable to I guess what James Franco did in 27 Hours, but possibly in many ways done more effectively. The last film we saw that had recognition was X-Men: Days of Future Past, which is being recognized for its visual effects. This is a multi-generational spanning, tons of X-Men, probably the biggest X-Men film in scope, but still very successful in accomplishing what it wanted to do.
Yeah, and I think this movie is being recognized for visual effects, and the visual effects are a huge part of the movie. There's big sentinel pieces, a lot of fights, and of course, a lot of mutant powers going on at the same time. But I think it also uses visual effects to its emotional benefit at times in the movie, where one scene you switch from Mystique's Jennifer Lawrence back to Peter Dinklage's Bolivar Trask, and they both, like, you're seeing two different actors play the same character, but like it was able to get that emotional resonance at the same time.
Okay, we're almost ending this edition of Inside the Academy Studio, and always we like to have questions. So I'm going to do a little bit of word association. When I say best of the rest, what do you think of?
I think of Redbox, because Redbox we were able to watch a lot more of these other movies because of Redbox, and I almost Redbox Canada.
And I think of Mark Ruffalo, whether it be in Begin Again or especially in Foxcatcher. So when we think best of the rest, we think of Redbox and Mark Ruffalo. That has been this edition of Inside the Academy Studio.
Thank you.